Bea Alonzo is worth an estimated $6 million, and she could be driving a Bentley to a Forbes Park mansion with a private chef waiting at the door. Instead, Bea drives herself to the grocery store, wears the same blouse in 3 different vlogs, and gets mistaken for someone's aunt at the mall. So here's the real question nobody is answering honestly. Why does one of the richest actresses in Philippine showbiz choose to look this normal? Stick around, because the answer is smarter than you think. By the end of this video, you are going to understand why she's different from the other celebrities. The career everyone knows V's. The career new. Let's start with a number, because numbers don't lie the way headlines do. Insiders have estimated some of Bea's biggest contracts in the 100 million peso range. That is the kind of money that makes most 27-year-olds buy a Lamborghini and a beachfront condo before the ink on the contract even dries. Bea did not do that, and once you see what she did instead, you're going to start noticing this pattern everywhere in her life, in her cars, her house, her business choices, even the brands she says no to. We're going through all of it, so don't go anywhere. First of all, who is Bea Alonzo? Bea Alonzo was born in Filbert Angeli Ranolo Fagastrom. She broke into showbiz as a teenager in the early 2000s. By her early 20s, she was already one half of the most bankable on-screen love team in the country, opposite John Lloyd Cruz. Movies like One More Chance were not just hits, they were cultural events. People went back to theaters multiple times just to watch it again, quoted lines from it for years afterward, and built an entire era of Filipino romance films around that pairing. That kind of pull is exactly why her films have collectively grossed over 3 billion pesos, making her one of the highest-grossing Filipino stars in history. She picked up major acting honors along the way, too. The kind of awards that do not just look good on a shelf, they directly translate into higher fees for the next project and the one after that. That's the career everyone knows. Here is the part that doesn't make the highlight reel. Most people assume Bea is rich purely because she's a movie star, and movie stars get paid a lot per project. That part's true. Her per-film fee has reportedly landed somewhere between $300,000 and $500,000 US depending on the project, which is genuinely elite money for the local industry, the kind of single paycheck that could cover a house deposit in one go. But here is the problem with movie paychecks. They are lumpy. You get one massive check and then nothing for months while you wait for the next role to land, while production gets delayed, while a script gets rewritten 3 times before anyone even calls you back. That gap isn't a one-time thing either. It repeats every single cycle, year after year, no matter how big your name gets. If that's your only income stream, you're not actually wealthy, even if your bank statement says otherwise for one glorious month. You're just well paid in bursts with long, quiet gaps in between where the bank account doesn't move at all, where nothing's coming in but the bills keep arriving exactly on schedule regardless of whether you just had a hit movie or not. And that is exactly where the trap is, because a 6-figure check sitting in your account feels like permanent wealth, even when it's really just one good month disguised as financial security. Your spending habits during the good months can quietly wreck you during the slow ones, because the lifestyle creep that one paycheck enables doesn't disappear just because the next paycheck is late. The actors who build wealth that actually lasts are the ones who take that lumpy income and turn it into something boring and steady. And that's the exact turn Bea made. She built one of the more consistent endorsement portfolios in the industry over the years, with deals tied to brands across beauty, fashion, electronics, and retail. The kind of roster that keeps renewing year after year instead of disappearing after one viral campaign. Endorsement money works completely differently from movie fees. Instead of one giant check that disappears the moment you spend it, you get paid steadily, sometimes for years, just for being a face people trust enough to buy what you're selling, often without lifting a finger beyond the initial shoot and design. That's the closest thing to passive income that exists in this industry, and it's the financial floor she built before she ever touched a single property deal. Now, here's where it gets interesting. In 2015, Bea Alonzo's name showed up on an official government list, the Department of Finance's top 500 individual taxpayers in the country for income earned back in 2013. She landed around the 105th spot, after reportedly paying over 15 million pesos in taxes that year alone. Sit with that for a second. To pay 15 million pesos in taxes, your actual income has to be in the tens of millions. That's not successful actress money. That's quietly one of the wealthiest people in the entire country. Money, confirmed by an actual government filing, not a blog guess, not fan speculation, not some random insider account on social media. And she was still in her mid-20s when that happened, years before most people even started thinking seriously about retirement accounts or investment portfolios. Her lifestyle views her money. So, if the money was already that serious that early, why doesn't the lifestyle match it? Why no convoy of luxury cars, buses, no viral mansion tour, no over-the-top flex that every other star her age seemed to be doing at the same time? This is where you have to understand something about Philippine showbiz that outsiders never quite get. Looking too rich in this industry can actually cost you money. The moment a star starts looking visibly wealthy, a few things happen fast. Fans start accusing you of forgetting your roots. Brands start negotiating your fee down because, hey, she clearly doesn't need it. And people start showing up out of nowhere asking for loans, donations, or just one small favor. Staying visually low-key isn't insecurity, it's basic financial self-defense. Take her car situation, for example. Multiple lifestyle write-ups over the years have pointed out that Bea sticks to practical, mid-range vehicles for everyday life instead of the flashy supercars some of her peers are known for parading around. Nobody's caught her doing donuts in a Lamborghini outside a mall opening, and you won't find a viral "look at my new ride" reveal video anywhere on her channels. And here's the financial logic almost nobody breaks down on camera. A luxury car might be one of the fastest wealth-destroying purchases a person can make. The second you drive a brand new high-end car off the lot, it can lose 10 to 20% of its value immediately. And it just keeps bleeding value every single year after that. On top of insurance, maintenance, and parts that cost a fortune because half of them are imported, and the other half need a specialist mechanic flown in just to touch the engine. A practical car costs a fraction to insure, holds its value longer, and frees up money for things that actually grow. Which brings us to where her money has actually been going. Beyond acting and endorsements, Bea has built a real footprint in business that rarely makes headlines, because honestly, headlines aren't the point. She launched her own lifestyle brand, Bash, a travel essentials line named after her character Basha from One More Chance. Proof that she's not just collecting paychecks, she's building things with her own name attached. Things that exist independently of whatever movie she's filming this year. Other celebrities have publicly shown support for the brand, which tells you it's not some vanity side project sitting forgotten in a drawer somewhere. It's an actual functioning business with actual customers. She's also been described as having interests that stretch into property and even sustainable farming, areas that don't trend on social media but quietly compound in value year after year while she's busy filming something else entirely. Property and land in the Philippines, especially in areas seeing steady development, have appreciated consistently over the past 2 decades. Buying early, before an area becomes fashionable, is one of the oldest wealth-building moves there is, and it's almost invisible from the outside, which is exactly why you don't see it trending the way a flashy condo reveal would. Nobody makes a viral video out of, "I bought some land and just let it sit there," even though that boring, unglamorous move is responsible for more generational wealth than almost anything else on this list. This tells you something important about how Bea actually thinks about money. Most actors treat acting like the entire business. Bea treats acting like the engine that funds other businesses. That's a completely different mental model. One version is hoping that the fame lasts forever. The other version is using fame as a high-paying temporary job that bankrolls permanent assets. If you remember one sentence from this whole video, remember this. Fame is temporary income. Assets are permanent income, and almost nobody in showbiz makes that switch before it's too late. The showbiz graveyard. And this is where the story gets a little uncomfortable because we have to talk about the alternative. Philippine showbiz has no shortage of cautionary tales. Stars who were arguably just as big or even bigger at their peak, filling magazine covers and topping ratings charts, only to find themselves a decade later doing public appeals just to cover hospital bills or quietly disappearing from the spotlight entirely because the money simply wasn't there anymore. You've probably seen at least one of these stories pop up in your own feed. The kind of headline that makes you stop scrolling for a second because you genuinely remember that person being everywhere just a few years earlier. The pattern is almost always identical. Big paycheck, big lifestyle upgrade, zero underlying assets to back it up. The house, the cars, the staff, the image, all of it gets locked in immediately, while the income supporting it was never designed to last forever. When the offers slow down, and they always eventually do, the lifestyle doesn't slow down with them. That gap is exactly where fortunes disappear, sometimes within just a handful of years. Bea built her entire life so that gap could never open in the first place. So where does this kind of discipline even come from in someone who started earning serious money as a literal teenager? It's worth remembering Bea didn't come from inherited wealth or industry connections. She was raised primarily by her mother after her parents separated, and she built this career from a fairly ordinary starting point. When you start with nothing and build everything yourself, money tends to feel real in a way it never quite does for people who were simply handed it. There's a particular kind of caution that comes from remembering what life felt like before the big paychecks existed, a refusal to assume the money will always keep showing up, because you remember a version of your life where it didn't. There's also a brand logic to staying grounded that's easy to underestimate. In an industry where audiences are increasingly skeptical of celebrities who feel completely out of touch, relatable has quietly become one of the most valuable things a public figure can hold on to. Think about which stars manage to last for decades versus which ones flame out after a few viral years. The ones who last are almost always the ones audiences feel they could still talk to, still see a piece of themselves in. The moment a star starts to feel untouchable, a new car every month, a mansion reveal, a lifestyle that screams distance from the average fan, something shifts in how people see them. They stop being one of us who made it, and start being one of them. Bea staying visibly normal isn't just personal preference. It's protecting the exact thing that makes everything else possible: her relatability, and by extension, her bookability. This loops right back to the endorsement point from earlier, and it's worth sitting with because it's a little counterintuitive. Brands don't always want the most visibly wealthy face for a campaign. They want the most trusted one. A beauty brand wants you to believe the spokesperson actually uses the product, not that she's untouchably rich and floating somewhere above your daily reality. An actress who feels like she could be your Kuya's office mate sells more products to everyday consumers than one who looks like she just stepped off a private jet. Bea's ordinary, approachable image isn't just a personality trait. It's a business asset that directly protects her ability to keep landing those steady, long-term endorsement deals we talked about earlier. Modesty, in her case, might not be the opposite of strategy. It might actually be the strategy. How she managed to stay rich. None of this means Bea doesn't spend money. She's not living like a hermit hoarding pesos under a mattress. She co-founded I Am Hope, a charity organization that has raised millions in cash and in-kind donations over the years for communities dealing with poverty and crisis relief. That kind of spending builds something money can't directly buy: goodwill, trust, and community standing, which circles back and protects the exact public image that keeps the endorsement deals coming. The difference between her spending and the broke 5 years later pattern isn't that she spends less overall. It's that almost nothing she spends on depreciates the way a flashy car or a closet full of designer bags does. Health, relationships, reputation, charitable goodwill, and appreciating assets all compound over time. Depreciating luxury goods just depreciates, full stop. There's another layer to this that doesn't get talked about enough, and it's the family piece. A lot of stars who grew up without much money end up supporting parents, siblings, extended relatives, sometimes an entire household, the moment the first big paycheck lands. That's not a bad thing on its own. It's actually pretty admirable. But it's also exactly the kind of spending that can quietly drain an account if there's no structure around it. The stars who manage this well tend to treat family support the same way they treat everything else: as a planned, sustainable line item rather than an open tap that gets turned on every time someone calls with a problem. Whether or not Bea has talked publicly about the specifics, the broader financial pattern she's shown, steady, planned, asset first, suggests she's the type to build that kind of structure rather than let it run wild. That's a quieter skill than picking the right stock or the right property, but it might be just as important, because it's usually the thing that wrecks people first. She's also talked publicly about wanting more balance in her life, more time for herself, less of the constant chasing that defined her 20s and 30s. That might sound like it has nothing to do with money, but it actually has everything to do with it. People who are financially stressed rarely talk about wanting balance. They're too busy trying to make the next payment or land the next gig. The fact that Bea can openly say she wants to slow down and focus on herself is itself a signal. It's the kind of statement that's only available to someone who isn't worried about where the next check is coming from. She's also reportedly spent time in Spain, where she has residency privileges through her father's side of the family, splitting time between countries in a way that would be financially impossible for someone living paycheck to paycheck off movie fees alone. Notice that even there, the instinct isn't to chase citizenship or make a big declaration about it. It's just quiet, low-key access to a different life whenever she wants it, which fits the exact same pattern we've been tracing this whole video. 2 decades of compounding. It's also worth zooming out on the timeline here, because this isn't some recent pivot. This is a 2-decade pattern. She's been in the industry since she was a young teenager in the early 2000s, which means by the time most people are graduating university and landing their first real job, Bea already had over a decade of high-level financial decisions behind her. Compound interest doesn't just apply to bank accounts, it applies to habits too. Someone who starts making conservative, asset-focused choices at 20 has 20 extra years of compounding behind them compared to someone who only gets serious about money at 40. By the time most of her peers started thinking seriously about retirement, Bea already had 2 decades of quiet asset building working in the background. That head start is honestly impossible to fully catch up to later, and it's the biggest reason her financial position looks so different from peers who were arguably just as famous, just as talented, and earning just as much at their peak. Now, to be fair, not everyone reads this story the same generous way. Some critics online have suggested the whole ordinary woman image is itself just a calculated PR move, since basically any celebrity benefits from looking relatable. So maybe we shouldn't assume there's some deep financial philosophy behind it instead of simple image management. And honestly, that criticism isn't crazy. It's a fair point, and worth taking seriously rather than dismissing outright. It's probably true that the relatable image and the financial discipline reinforce each other, rather than one being the real reason and the other just a cover story. The most likely explanation is that both things are true at the same time. She's making genuinely sound financial decisions, and those decisions also happen to support a public image that benefits her career. Smart people are usually capable of 2 things being true at once. What's harder to argue with is the actual paper trail, the tax records, the business launches, the charity work, the endorsement longevity. Image management can fake a vibe for a little while, maybe even fool people for a few years if the PR team is good enough. It's a lot harder to fake 15 million pesos in verified annual tax payments. Beyond just talking about one celebrity's bank account, you should note that the pattern Bea followed doesn't only work for actresses with movie star paychecks. It scales down perfectly to a completely normal income. The moves were simple: turn unpredictable income into something steady wherever you can. Buy appreciating assets quietly instead of depreciating status symbols loudly. And resist the lifestyle creep that wants to expand the second your paycheck does. None of those 3 things require fame. They require patience and the willingness to look a little less impressive in the short term in exchange for being actually secure in the long term. The uncomfortable truth is that most people who suddenly get a windfall, a bonus, an inheritance, a promotion, do the exact opposite of what Bea did. They upgrade the lifestyle immediately, lock in new fixed costs right away, and end up no more financially secure than before the windfall ever happened. Just with nicer stuff and the exact same anxiety they started with, sometimes worse, because now there's a monthly payment attached to the anxiety too. So is Bea Alonzo rich yet ordinary? Not exactly. She's rich precisely because she chose to look ordinary. The modesty isn't a contradiction of the wealth, it's the engine that helped build it, and the shield that keeps protecting it for whatever comes after the cameras eventually stop rolling. The way they do for everyone in this industry sooner or later, no matter how big the name is right now. The stars who disappear broke are usually the ones who spent their 20s trying to look as rich as possible. The ones still standing decades later, like Bea, are usually the ones who spent their 20s trying to actually be rich, quietly, boringly, and on paper, where it actually counts. That's it about why Bea Alonzo is so rich, yet lives like an ordinary woman. Do you think Bea Alonzo's modesty is just PR? Yes or no? Let us know in the comments section. And if you enjoyed this video, hit that like button and then you share it with your friends. Don't forget to subscribe to Her Status for more empowering stories. Until next time, take care.